Hi everyone, I'm Steven, and today I'm using cardboard to make Moon Knight's Crescent dart weapons, so let's jump right into it. I started off by tracing a photo of the weapon using some reference photos that I found online. Then I grabbed a stack of cereal box cardboard that I've been hoarding. Each cereal box will fit 4 tracings, that's 2 per side. And why exactly does that matter? Well, in order to make Moon Knight's weapon, I'm going to stack together 26 layers. But that would be a little bit too much tracing and cutting out for me, so I'm going to stack them and then do them in stacks. In order to do this, I folded and cut each piece of cardboard in half. Occasionally I double checked that the template of the Crescent dart would fit, and the process was really quick. It wasn't long until I had all 26 pieces. Using white glue, I glued together stacks of 4. Every time I finished gluing a stack together, I weighed it down with something heavy so that it would dry flat. By the way, I think the last stack only had 2 layers, but I digress. Once all of the stacks dried, I cut out the first piece of the template, this is the bigger piece, and taped it onto the stacks and cut that out. This process was repeated for all of these stacks. It seems time consuming, but it wasn't bad at all. At first I used a utility knife, but switched it over to scissors since it was a lot quicker. After everything was cut out, I lined everything up to see if they were even. Switching from the knife to the scissors apparently messed up my cuts a little bit, but that's okay, I'll fix the unevenness later. I glued all of these stacks together, once again using white glue. I took my time with this and made sure that each stack would line up properly. When all of them were glued together, you guessed it, I weighed it down with something heavy and then waited for it to dry. Meanwhile, I cut out the second piece of the template. This is the thinner piece that has all the designs scribbled on it. Originally, I had only planned to cut out 2 of these, but decided last minute that this piece needed 4 layers, so that's a stack of 2 on the front of the Crescent dart, and then the other 2 on the back of the Crescent dart. I glued those layers together, taped on the template, cut it out, and repeated it for the other stack. After I cut them out, I traced one of them onto the big boy thick stack I made earlier. This line just helped give me a rough idea on where I needed to sand, because that's the next step, sanding. Now if you make this Moon Knight weapon, you can totally sand everything by hand, use a Dremel or even a palm sander. However, I had a belt sander and that helped me speed up the process. So I took the belt sander out of the garage and sanded the inside of the weapon on both the front and back in order to make the points come to a point. I often switched from my electric sander to sandpaper to clean up some of the loose bits that were falling off. The goal is to taper the points so it's like a wedge, and also taper the center at a steeper angle so it loosely resembles a blade. I know that's kind of confusing, but you basically just put more pressure as you're coming to the points and less pressure as you're coming to, I guess you would say, like the handle of the blade. But yeah, once I got a shape that I liked, I popped the little pieces out of piece number 2 from the template and then glued that piece number 2 onto this big boy. And I really went heavy with the glue to make sure that it would stick in place now that the blade is slightly curved. If you make this, you definitely want to go get all up in there with your fingers and carefully press and tap the pieces into place so it is just one solid piece. After that glue was dried, I used scissors to even up the points before taking sandpaper to sand over the top of the weapon so the edges would be round. It took me about 45 minutes to sand this curve. Because my cuts weren't exactly even, there were some gaps, and that's kind of a no-no since you want it to be really smooth. So the next step for me was to fill in the gaps with joint compound. I smeared it on, let it dry, and lightly sanded away any bumps. Okay, so let's move on to the decorations. Each of these cutout openings needed a rough looking texture, so I used a very tiny amount of hot glue and smeared it around each opening. If you make this, feel free to use even less glue than I did. Oh, and keep all the glue inside the little cutouts. Then the only design that I really concerned myself with was the ankh in the center. All of the other pieces were just glued down random bits of cereal box scraps. I'm sure that they are symbols and those symbols mean something important. They might actually even be used writing in a different language, But since the show isn't out yet, I couldn't find a clearer picture of the symbols, so I kind of just winged it and put pieces of cardboard just to kind of give the illusion of writing and symbols and magic or whatever. But with all of that in place, it was time to paint. I'll break this paint job into 7 steps, just so it makes a little bit more sense and is easier to follow. Step 1 was painting the entire Crescent Dart in black craft paint. Step 2 was painting over the black in metallic silver craft paint in 3 very light layers. Light layers just helps keep the paint look even and avoid it looking too splotchy and messy. However, when it was just silver, it was starting to look a little flat and boring, especially when I compared it to the Moon Knight teaser poster that I was referencing. So I did a test. I mixed together silver with copper and silver with light gold. I liked the way that the silver and the copper combo looked better. It kind of looked tarnished, it kind of looked like tarnished metal. So now it is time for step 3 of the paint job. I went over the entire weapon with a light layer of this copper silver mixture. It started to give some depth, and that made me really happy. It moved it from looking so flat into something that just looked a little bit more alive. But with that mixture on it, I decided that the black that was peeking through in all the cutout sections was a little bit too dark, so I lightly went over the black mixed with silver. That's just so it would look a little bit lighter, and that's step number 4 of this paint job. You really can't tell the difference on camera, but in person it decreases the contrast and makes a big difference. Step 5 was when I added a very light layer of silver mixed with black between the blade and the upper portion of the blade. This kind of just gave it a little bit more depth and kind of like grunge, like if it was grunged up a little bit. Okay, then step 6 was just lightly painting on another thin layer of metallic silver. I did this just to bring out some of the highlights and give it just another layer of color that adds another layer of depth. And yeah, I was really loving it. But you want to know what I loved even more? I loved the blood splatter in the reference photo. I thought that was really cool. So the final step, step 7 of this paint job, was grabbing some red craft paint, mixing in some copper and black craft paint, and painting the points in a blood splatter. I went over the tips and then just started adding on a little bit here and there just to make it look realistic. But you're going to see all that in a second with the final reveal. So there you have it, Moon Knight's Crescent Darts made out of cardboard cereal boxes. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I love that the paint looks like real metal, and the blood splatter really gives it some life, which is kind of ironic because he probably killed someone. But yeah, I hope you guys like it too. If you want to make this yourself and do it much quicker, just use a thick piece of EVA foam like a floor mat or something like that. It's already the desired thickness, and then you can just add on the thinner pieces and sand it and paint it the exact same way that I did. Anyway, as always, the template is linked below in case you guys want to make it yourself. And please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye bye.